Hi guys, it's Kelly from Cards by Christine here with you on a Technique Thursday to share with you the split DSP technique. So let's check it out. This card was previewed last week in Technique Thursday, and it's got a fun technique of its own, so I thought I'd show it off and show off the cards again because they're so cool, and show you how to do this because there's a little bit of brain power that goes behind figuring out how to implement this. I mean, for this card, this exact design, these measurements, you wouldn't have to think through it, but I'm going to show you how to think through it if you want to use a different sentiment or don't want to do a triple mat, so that you know how to set yourself up for success in laying out a card like this. So first I'm going to show you just how this exact layout is done, and then I'll walk you through the measurements. So we have here for our triple mat, the width is 3 5/8, okay? And then the height of that layer would be 4 7/8 if this was a full sheet of paper. We're cutting out a little area to put a sentiment in, and that would be dictated by the size of your sentiment. For this card, we're using Get Well Soon, which is a single line. It's a small font, so it's a small space. Obviously, we want to give ourselves a little buffer room on top and bottom of that sentiment. So you'll see here we did that. So we're taking out about 5/8 of an inch in the middle here. So what we're doing is we're going to cut the piece at 3 5/8. Here you can see I've got the little cheat sheet here. So it's 3 5/8 by 4 1/4, and then that additional 5/8 is made up in this little kind of valley space that we made. So your piece of DSP is going to be 3 5/8 wide by 4 1/4 tall. That'll get you the cut of DSP that you need. Then you're just gonna slice it along the long edge, and that's gonna be cut at 3 inches. Then all you have to do is adhere it, and you've got the pieces that you need. And I'll help you figure out those measurements for your own design. But let me tell you next how to go ahead and get this stamped, because you want to have that stamped in there nice and straight and exactly where you want it. So, ooh, this is a brand new stamp set. Lovely. Okay, so Get Well Soon is right here. And what you would do is you'd mount it on your stamp just like normal. And my advice to you is, in stamping this, get your supplies all around and bring out this white matted piece. That's obviously what you're going to be stamping on. But then to get it all centered how you want it, and we're just going to pretend on the back here, you're going to hover your pieces of DSP exactly where you would be gluing them, okay? So you want to make sure that you're giving yourself the appropriate space, and then you're going to bring your stamp in and ink it and stamp it. But to ensure that you don't make a mess and ruin your DSP, to give yourself that buffer, I would flip your DSP to the back side, the side that you're going to be gluing down. Now, if you drop your stamp on it crooked, or if you get a fingerprint on it, it's not going to ruin your card. So let your paper hover where it is going to get glued down. Bring your stamp in. I'm just going to grab a black so I can help you visualize this. Ink it up and then stamp it down. Now, because it's a photopolymer stamp and because you've got your paper all laid out, you can envision exactly how it's going to look on your card. Then you can stamp it. Now, because it's on a matted layer, not on the pretend piece in front of me, but because it's on a matted layer, if it does end up being crooked, or if you don't stamp it the best, you can still flip that mat over and try again. Now, let's say that you got it exactly how you want it. Then once that's all done, you can go ahead and either glue on, or my suggestion would be for a card like this to dimensionalize your DSP layer. And that's really just going to help you define that kind of void space that you put the sentiment in. All right, so hopefully that all made sense. So just to let you know those numbers again, you've got 3 5/8 for your width here, and then you've got 4 1/4 for the height of the DSP. The size of this mat would have been 4 7/8, and then we just took that 5/8 inch chunk out of the middle here to accommodate your sentiment. Now, if you wanted to do this on a double mat or a different size, the things you're going to want to do to get that math to work out. So let's say it's a traditional mat size of 4 by 5 1/4. So that's going to be the size of your DSP piece. The next thing you want to do is pick out the sentiment that you want to use. So let's say, I'm just going to use the same ringed in nature set. I'm going to grab the next sentiment, which is a little bigger, and this is going to say, thinking of you. Now, just like this get well soon, you want to make sure to leave yourself enough buffer space so that you're not getting the DSP too tight up to it. So you want to probably stamp it, or in this case, I'm just going to measure on the case front. See, it says images at 90%. So if I measured this, it would only be 90% of the height. So stamp it and measure, or if you've got decent eyes, you can measure just the size of the stamp in front of you. So I'm going to give myself a 1 inch void, and I could probably, 1 inch will get you a little border beneath the thinking of you portion of it. I might actually go so far as to center it even a little more and do 1 1/8. Now, of course, that's going to make the math just a little more difficult, but we are up for a challenge. And that's just another point to actually make. If math is not your strong suit, or this is not making sense to you, you can absolutely round that down to 1 inch or give it a little bit bigger of a void by rounding it up to 1 1/4 inches. Sometimes those numbers are a little easier to work with, and that's absolutely not a problem. Okay, so then basically 4 inches, your width is not going to change. It's your 5 1/4 that we're taking 1 1/8 off of. So your piece of DSP is going to come in at 4 by 4 1/8. So 4 1/8 plus 1 1/8 is 5 1/4. So that's the size of the piece of DSP that you're going to be using. And then you can determine where you want the sentiment to hit. So Chris designed this card with a 2/3, 1/3 type of layout. The sentiment's coming in that bottom third. You could absolutely put it straight in the middle, cut that 4 1/8 at about 2 and get it in the middle. You could put it in the top third. So that is the next thing that you kind of have to weigh into consideration when you take this now perfectly sized piece and decide where you're going to make that cut. So on the sample card, which is a triple mat, we made the cut at 3 inches, which put it into that bottom third. So again, here, if you cut it at maybe 3 inches, you still get it into about that third area. You'd have 1 1/8 at the bottom, but that would dictate where this custom size piece of DSP gets cut. All right, so I hope all of that math and all of that crazy jargon I just threw at you made sense as to how we thought through the process of making this DSP, the split DSP technique for this beautiful card. This card is part of the Let's Just Stamp card series. So that means all 3 of these cards, you've got a preview of some of the rest of them over here. All 3 of these cards are using just stamps and embellishments, ribbons, inks, and such of the sort. No dies or embossing folders necessary. So if you're more into the beginner stages of your card making career, or if you even just want something maybe a little less difficult, sometimes it can be overwhelmed by dies and embossing folders and stuff like that. Sometimes you just want to keep it basic, but still get a really beautiful card. And that's what this class is all about. So you get you get the card kits, just as you would. You will do your stamping at home. So the Ringed with Nature set is what this ink, paper, scissors is based around. So here you can see you've got the tree rings on this one is stamped. Also, the mushrooms are stamped from this. Here we've got the beautiful poinsettia, which is stamped with the flower and the leaves, and then we have fussy cutting around that. And this one, ironically, you've got just the fussy cut house here. That's actually from the piece of DSP. So that's how these cards are made. Last week we talked about this scoring technique that gives you that beautiful background on this card. So if you missed that video, go check that out. And then here I'll show you this card again. This is a bit of a fun fold here, where this square flap opens to the right, and then the DSP layer opens to the left for this fun fold card. So if you are interested in making these beautiful cards, you can always join the class. Reach out to Chris for more information about that. And you can join us in making these beautiful cards. Here you'll see our host code if you're interested in placing an order. I do just want to let you know that that host code is valid as of the day that this video was filmed. So it may not be the current host code. And if you are using a host code to order, which we always appreciate, and you get an error code, that just means that the party that you see the host code for has been closed, and that you can go to the website, cardsbychrisb.com, to find the current host code.
And it's always needed for online classes.
Yes, and if you are taking an online class, you always need to use that host code to kind of qualify for the order to get that class, because we all want free cards, right? All right, so there you have it. Just another fun technique for you. I hope you have a wonderful Technique Thursday, and you can catch Chris later tonight for some live card making.